Good people, great people, guys, people. What the deal? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Um, if y'all don't already know, this is a dual stream. So how it is that I do this is I go live on TikTok and I also go live on YouTube so that I can have multiple places where my lives are stored, and I can go back to those lives and I can do some of my own editing and some of my own things that I want to do with the lives. So yes, this is on YouTube, Odie's office, right? So if you want to watch this high definition stream on YouTube, it is available at Odie's office. Please continue to share the live because I think that I'm going to be answering a lot of questions that people had today, and I definitely want to get into it, right? So I posted a TikTok yesterday that said basically that it's axiologically illogical for black people to be both black and homophobic. And I had a number of responses to this TikTok, right? So right now this TikTok is at I think like 135,000 views, and the conversation is continuing to unfold. But I think that it's a great conversation, or it was a great conversation starter. One, because I am not a part of the LGBTQIA community. I am a distinct ally to the LGBTQIA community, but I've also studied queer theory, I've studied womanist theory, I've studied feminist theory, and I've studied all of these other theories in order to become a more culturally competent clinician, right? Not only that, as an individual, I take it upon myself to understand how it is that we as oppressed peoples move, but also how it is that we continue to re-perpetuate some of the oppression that we feel, right? So I put the TikTok in those particular words for a particular reason, right? I said that blackness in the contextualization of white supremacy is inherently queer. And I did that on purpose, right? The reason why I did that on purpose is because I wanted to see how people were going to respond to this reality that could be debatable in a multitude of ways. So here's a very quick tip. Very quick tip. Very few things are cut and dry, right or wrong. Very few things. What usually makes things right or wrong is the value that we attach to them as individuals, right? So for example, I had some people say to me, you're utilizing a definition of queer that is not the current definition. My rebuttal to that was, I am using a definition of queer that's the current definition. I'm just not utilizing a definition that aligns with your definition of what queer is, or what your perception of what queer is. And that's okay, right? Your perception of queer is probably based upon how it is that you identify and how it is that you resonate with it, which is okay. I'm not removing that from you, and I'm attempting to not overstep my boundaries as not being a part of the LGBTQI community, but being an ally and understanding where my understanding begins and ends, right? But my understanding of queerness is very deep because I realized over time that as an individual, I am queer. In a lot of ways, I am queer as it relates to not only how it is that I perceive myself in my gender role outside of the gender binary, but also how it is that I present to people, not only just within blackness, but also within whiteness, right? But the reason why I utilize the term queer specifically is because I knew that people would have a polarized reaction to it, right? Because the way that it is that we understand queerness is inherently sexualized. And the reason why we understand queerness as something that's inherently sexualized is because of the contextualization of white supremacy, right? We identify queer as purely sexual because the conversation began happening at a period of time where respectability politics was still a thing, right? So people could not bring themselves to say that person is gay or that person is a lesbian. That person is queer, right? When we begin talking about the politics of the LGBTQIA community, and when we begin talking about the dynamics of the LGBTQIA community, most of the people who did a number of the political mobilizations were queer in the LGBTQIA community, not because they were gay or they were lesbian, because they were black, right? The LGBTQIA community is not some land where everybody just gets along, right? My homies get me hip because the first time, because I'm not gonna lie, as a black man, I had that conceptualization too. I had that conceptualization because they were all oppressed peoples that were not only oppressed socially but sexually. You know, there would be some cohesion in that. I was wrong. I was so very wrong, right? One of my first understandings of how it is that intersectionality played in the LGBTQI community was when I was talking to one of my good friends. His name is Akeem Ray. Love Mr. Ray. He describes himself as a power bottom, which I genuinely appreciate, right? So I said to him, Akeem, you know, because what he said, you know, I don't really enjoy, you know, lesbians. And I was like, but you're a gay man. I thought y'all all supposed to be, you know what I'm saying, cool people. So he was like, no, that's not how that works. I was like, all right, brother, man, give me hip. This man said something to me that I thought was the most, and y'all gotta excuse me, it was the gayest way to be racist that I had ever heard in my life. This man said, in the gay community, in the gay dating community specifically, there are undergirding rules that some people have. It is no rice, no spice, no chocolate. And when he said it to me, the fact that I immediately knew what he was talking about was sickening. I immediately knew. And the reason why it was sickening for me is because it made my stomach turn, because I immediately realized that there are white LGBTQIA people who will align themselves more so with whiteness in order to remove themselves from being oppressed as a gay person, right? Which means that a black queer person now not only exists within that community as queer, but also as black, right? So for a lot of black people, when we as cis hetero black people say you're choosing your sexuality over your race, essentially what we are saying is that person has the privilege of dissecting the two. And most of the black queer homies do not have that privilege. They don't, right? So when people began responding and saying, oh, you're utilizing queer in this way on purpose, you're right, I am. Because a lot of y'all in the LGBTQI community don't even identify how much it is that you've internalized white supremacy and anti-blackness until I put it in your face. And then the first thing that will be said is, you're not a part of the community. You're right, but I got homies who will agree with me on the same premise. Then what's your point? Right? I try my hardest to not speak on things that I do not understand, but the things that I understand them very well. You feel what I'm saying? We're not going to pretend as if though racism does not exist in the LGBTQI community, right? So imagine the plight of a black queer person, right? You can't go home and you can't even go to the community. So where do you go? Right? Where do you go? As a black person, that is the reason why I said in the context of white supremacy, blackness is inherently queer. Let me tell you all how white supremacy created the idea of blackness. They took religious persecution and they added it to legal recourse. They took religious persecution and they added it to legal recourse. What does that mean, Professor Odie? What it means is that white people, in order to justify slavery, had to queer blackness in order to resolve themselves of the moral ineptitude of having slaves. They had to. They had to. And that is the reason why white people have such a difficult cognitive dissonance when we say to them, that is the reason why white people have that cognitive dissonance when we reduce it to the common denominator that you are being racist or you are being prejudiced. That is also the reason why reverse racism is not a thing, because we do not have that legal recourse that makes that religious persecution or makes that moral persecution powerful. We do not have it, right? That is how blackness itself is queered by white supremacy. It is spoiled, it is ill, it is incorrect. If you go back and you look at how white supremacy was created in the Virginia colonies and in the British colonies, in the British Indian colony, in the British West Indies, right? They took the two most derisive and the most dehumanizing forms of slave law and put them together. And the way that they kept it together was that they identified Africans as eternal enemies to Christian nations. Why? Because what it is that they were doing was barbaric and backwards. Was it really? No. These folks just needed a way to justify their oppression. So they made blackness by default odd. They made blackness by default spoiled. They made blackness by default ill. They made blackness by default something that is a deviation from the norm. If you go look at the definition, the informal definition of queer, that is exactly what it is. That is one. Two, the offensive definition of the word queer has to do with sexuality, but that's one dimension. That is one dimensional. Right? That is one dimensional. The word queer exists in the LGBTQIA community because the LGBTQIA community was seen as a moral deviation from white cis hetero gender role dynamics. That is why it is queered. Not only that, and this is when we finna get into homophobia for real, right? Because when people say homophobia is a direct byproduct of white supremacy, they're not lying. They're not lying. Leviticus 18:22 was modified. The original word meant child in man. They were talking about pedophiles. This is the reason why in most black communities, we would defend the uncle that'll touch kids instead of the uncle that'll touch another man. Because the Bible has taught us that pedophilia is okay. I know how y'all like to tussle. Let's tussle. I know how y'all like to tussle. So let's tussle, right? Because somebody else in my comments said to me, and me and her had a back and forth because I felt like she was being backhanded, right? She said to me that singing is not walking and intellectualizing is not feeling. Basically, she was a woman who was tired of men just talking shit, which I felt. But at the same time, I'm a man who walks. I'm a man who walks. So, if we look at the way that it is that these organized religion houses are walking, are they really walking with the God that they say that they're walking with? Or are they walking with the conceptualization of God that they have created for themselves in order to process through their moral ineptitudes? Because if you do the latter, you are quite literally behaving like a white supremacist. That is anthropological fact. Right? So then, Odie, why is the live titled Intersectionality and Intelligence? I will tell you why. If you operate from a space of believing that somebody at an intersection is unable to process something else at another intersection, you are utilizing classist ideologies of deviation in order to identify that person's intelligence. In other words, I had a lot of people in my comments saying to me, why are you using such big words? Because it's a large idea. Because it is a large idea. Hold on, y'all. My phone started ringing. Because it is a large idea. Right? It's a large idea. So, what we are talking about here is an ideology, an ideological difference, right? What we are talking about here is this conceptualization that we don't have to use big words to describe these ideas. So then why do those words exist? Why do those words exist? Right? Intelligence is something that is based upon how it is that you identify and value ideas. When you say you don't have to use these big words, what it sounds like is that I'm intimidated by this idea. I'm intimidated by the complexity of this idea. You deserve more. Give yourself more. Do more work. Right? Because to me, as somebody who has done the work, it is insulting for you to basically say, come down here to me. I will not. I refuse. Because in my mind, that means that I have to make space for your understanding instead of you developing the understanding so that we can have a communication, an effective communication. Right? And unfortunately, it was a lot of black folks. You feel me? Like, oh, why you got to use these big words? Why you got to do this? Why you got to do that? Why does it bother you that I utilize this lexicon? Why does it bother you that I'm utilizing what somebody called buzzwords when the reality of the situation is a buzzword is exactly that? It's supposed to make people buzz. It's supposed to generate a conversation. Right? And that's exactly what that TikTok did. It generated a conversation. It generated a conversation around how it is that we, even at these intersections, perceive other intersections on the same damn street. Right? We set trip over somebody else on another block that's on the same road. Right? Because we used to people attacking our block. We used to people, you know what I'm saying, trying to tear down our egos. So when somebody else is asking a question or providing a valid counterpoint, because we are used to people attacking, we try to defend. The reality of the situation is this. The reason why I use the words that I use is because I was taught to use them that way. Right? The same way a lot of us wear the hair that we do, the same way a lot of us dress the way that we do, the same way we have a white phone talking voice and a black speaking voice. This is what it is that was instilled in me in order to engage in the respectability politics of whiteness. My vocabulary is what it is that I was taught in order to engage in the respectability politics of whiteness. Do I need to speak like this all the time? No. Do I feel compelled to speak like this all the time? No. But am I going to utilize my lexicon in order to understand or in order to process ideas that are much larger and have more nuance than what it is that we are willing to admit? 100%. Because we must do the work. We must do the work. We must take the time to understand what it is that we are actually attempting to process through. Right? And this is how it is that we alleviate ourselves from the ignorance that allows us or gives us the permission to make these missteps and then look to that other person and say, well, I mean, that's just how it is. Is that how it has to be? Is that how it has to be? Right? So I really want to get into this whole idea of what it is to be intelligent at a particular intersection. Right? Because we like to pride ourselves on believing that what it is that we believe is right or wrong. Everything is debatable and nothing is fact. Everything is debatable and nothing is fact. Right? How it is that we come to identify fact is empirical. Empiricism is a philosophy of thought that identifies the five senses as the best way to identify a scientific phenomena or a natural phenomena. But even still, empiricism has its limits. And one of those limits is not understanding the absence of something being something. Empiricism is where we get materialism. In other words, if we can't touch it, it doesn't exist. And when I say touch, I mean if we can't perceive it, it doesn't exist. What does that sound like to y'all? Sound like the separation between hard science and soft science, right? Which one of these sciences are more valued in the United States? And why? Because the hard sciences were used to support what? Religious moralisms, which then became what? Legal recourse. Somebody defines something as queer based upon what it is that they perceive to be normal. Our perception of normalcy did not come from us. It did not. You can argue all day. You can tussle. I am telling you, anthropologically, it did not come from us. Historically, we have not challenged it, and contemporarily, we cling on to it because we are afraid to be called queer. We are afraid to be called queer. And that is the reason why so many people in my comments was like, oh, so what you saying, black people is inherently gay? Why is it that your only perception of queerness is sexual? That's the same problem we have with women. We perceive them as sexual objects and not full human beings, right? So what are we talking about here? What are we truly and honestly getting at here? We are getting at the nuance of intersection and how it is that those nuances of intersections create new realities away from the realities that we already have, right? So I'm gonna tell y'all something else that just grinds my gears, bro. Somebody in my comments was like, of course you would use postmodern definitions and not the definitions that are already there. My friend Watts. Waiting. My friend wants to be this nonsense that was just said to me, right? Of course you would use the postmodern definition, right? And not the definition that's in the dictionary. Now, I'm going to be very clear. When I define words, I utilize a hybrid of postmodern and etymology, which means that I want to understand how the word was defined and how we got to the contemporary definition, right? So whenever y'all, from this point moving forward, if you are going to come in my comment section and say this is not how this word is defined, be prepared to run an etymological race. And if you are not prepared to run that race, my suggestion is you do not say anything in my comments. Don't do it to yourself. Don't. Because once again, the way in which I define words is specific to the nuance that I am attempting to portray. And because most people will not walk through the nuance that I'm attempting to portray, that's the reason why y'all tripping. Because you're trying to run through an ideological thing that you are supposed to walk through. You trying to run to a conclusion so fast that you can say something is right or wrong instead of really taking the time to internalize what's being said to you. Right? Of course you use the postmodern definition and not the definition that's in the dictionary. What? Don't say stuff like that out loud. Because that's a real convoluted way to say that I'm okay with being stupid. That is a very convoluted way, a very long-winded way for you to say that you're okay with being stupid. That is a real convoluted way for you to say that you are okay with being stupid. And I'm going to tell you, if it's one thing for sure and two things for certain, I'm going to call a stupid person stupid. Because the definition of the word stupid is to behave as if though you are operating through a haze or a stupor or without the knowledge of application. That is the textbook definition of the word stupid. I'm not saying that you are a stupid person. I am saying that what it is that you just said was stupid. So, when you decide to open your mouth to say to somebody, oh, well, that's not the definition. Are you sure that's not the definition? Because you cannot just rely on common knowledge to define something. That's the lazy way of defining something. You are allowing yourself to be lazy. You are not holding yourself accountable to engage in the full weight of that ideological discourse. That is what you are doing. You are allowing yourself to sit and rest on the laurels of what it is that you believe that you know in order to engage in a debate with somebody who has literally studied these things. This is the reason why some of y'all out here looking like complete and utter assholes. Because you believe that your ego projection is more valuable than research. Makes absolutely no sense. None at all. Makes absolutely no sense. I need for us to have more accountability at our intersections. What I mean by that is, if you recognize that your intersection participates in a particular type of deviation, you need to ensure that you are not a part of that deviation. Or if you are a part of that deviation, you need to be able to communicate and take accountability for what happens at that intersection. So in other words, I'm going to break it down, since apparently people have an issue with me being loquacious and verbose, right? So I'm gonna break it down. As a black, cis hetero, mostly straight, 6'3", long locks, 276 pound, 2-degreed, black man, Igbo man from Chicago, Illinois, there are particular things within that demographic intersection that I know I am complicit in. That does not mean that I participate or condone. It means I am complicit. What does complicit imply? Not what does it mean? What does it imply? Complicit means that because I am at this intersection, if I do not speak against it, that means the probability of me being for it is very high. Once again, complicit implies, not as defined, but implies. Once again, we get into this etymology that folks think that they can whoop me on. I got the dumbest handles with the, you know what I'm saying? You feel me? Got the dumbest ideological handles. Listen, right? Complicit implies that you are silent in the face of injustice. And a lot of us are silent in the face of injustice. As a black man, I will not be complicit in the joking of sexual assault of black women. As a black man, I will not be complicit in the downgrading of femininity or womanism simply because I'm a man. As a black man, I will not be complicit in the demeaning and dehumanizing of black women because that is my counterpart and that is my equal. As a black man, I will not be complicit in centering white supremacy in anything that I do because white supremacy is a pseudoscientific delusion that was created for white people to feel better about themselves in their unsupported state. There are things that I will not be complicit in as a black man because as a black man, I know that there are too many people who are complicit in it. Therefore, I have to speak out against it. The way that I choose to speak out against it is based upon how it is that I've learned how to speak. So what does that mean? What does that mean? It means two things. One, as people, at some level, we are all complicit in white supremacy because white supremacy operates in both physical and psychic violence that makes us understand that bucking against white supremacy has a particular amount of risk associated with it, and not everybody values that risk. That's one. Two, understanding what it is that looks like from the perspective of your intersection means that you need to understand that at some level you are going to be called out on something that you are doing that is complicit in the oppression of other people, because once again, we are all complicit in white supremacy at some level. My compulsion or my want to speak at this particular level comes from my mother's want for me to not curse so often and be perceived as a black man who was not able to properly and cohesively string together his thoughts. Yet here I am, a 29-year-old black man who got his master's at 23, who can comprehensively and cohesively string together his thoughts and still call you a fuck nigga at the end of the day. Balance, duality, right? Are we balanced? Are we engaging in dialectics? Right? Do we know that two things can be present at the same time and that the presence of one does not mute the reality of the other? Right? Are we comfortable with getting sticky and icky? Because a lot of us are not. A lot of us want to hold on to our own self-projections and our egos so much that we will minimize somebody else's reality just to make our own reality valid. Once again, nothing is fact and everything is debatable. Because if you get deep enough into epistemology, you will know that in the United States of America, our conceptualization of reality, one, came from Africans. It came from the Cometians. It came from the Egyptians. The Pythagorean theorem The Pythagorean theorem is based upon the 3-4-5 triangle, which was given to Pythagoras or was learned by Pythagoras in Egypt. Is not necessarily certain as to whether or not he learned it directly from the Cometians at the temples, but he learned it in Egypt, right? Which means that he learned the culture of numerology, the Pythagorean numerology. The Chaldeans were Eastern Africans. They were Ethiopians, right? They were people of brown skin. They were African people, right? So white people's entire conceptualization of reality, right? The theory of relativity, all of those things came from black people. So let's start there, right? Which means that when we get to the United States of America, it becomes bastardized. Once again, religious moralisms and legal recourse, right? What did not come over from Africa was the spirit science. What did not come over was the divination. What did not come over was the reinvigoration. And the reason being was because it did not axiologically align. Once again, it did not axiologically align with the values and the moralisms of the enslavement of Africans. It did not fit axiologically. And that is the reason why a lot of y'all start to trip when y'all see how it is that I got the dip on my chip. Because a black man who was able to express himself the way that I do is queer in the space of white supremacy. I said what I said and I meant what I said. Because if it wasn't the case, it wouldn't be so many of y'all tripping over them big ass words. So let's be real here. Right? Let's talk about it. Let's be 100. You feel me? Oh yeah, people despise facts, but they despise facts because in the United States of America, we don't use facts in order to generate outcomes. We use our opinions. That's the reason why I said a lot of us as black folk are complicit in white supremacy, not because we want to be like white people, but because we follow white people without questioning why they do what it is that they do. Right? The reason why a lot of black people think that Africans hate black people is because of white supremacy. But as an African person, I can see how an African person would not rock with black people because black people say the same thing about African people that white people do. And once again, before y'all start tussling, please remember that I am both black and African. I'm sorry, black and Igbo. Black American and Igbo American. I've seen y'all do it. Y'all used to do it to me. Right? So once again, in the context of white supremacy, blackness is queer. Because they had to queer Africanity first. You don't think it's odd that in the year 2022, a lot of y'all still think that Africa only got huts? Y'all don't think that's weird? In the year 2022, there's no conceptualization of progress and process on the continent? None? That means that you have swallowed the pill that being in America means that you are more advanced. That is a white supremacist ideology. We believe that the United States is a democracy. It is not. It's not. The United States utilizes information overload and nudging and psychological implementation or psychological implants in order for you to believe that you are engaging in free range and exchange of ideas. The reality of the situation is that the United States shows you through force who it agrees with and who it does not. That is the reason why the GOP has gotten so far in what it is that they've gotten in, because they did not check who came up to the Capitol on January 6th. The United States is a white supremacist nation, and they sealed the deal on January 6th. Sealed the deal. Because you allowed the children of your ancestors to come and have a temper tantrum at your doorstep, and you said, okay, baby, we're going to fix it for you. So I want to be very clear about the relationship between intersectionality and intelligence. Intelligence is based upon moral value and what it is that you can apply within your own intersection. That is it. That is all. The intelligence that we get off of paper is literally based upon scientific racism. And not enough of it has been edited or gone through for me to solely believe that the types of intelligences that we value in the United States of America are the only types of intelligences that are relevant. The APA funded multiple spaces educationally and occupationally to design tests that were based upon and reinforced eugenics, white supremacy, and sexism. In other words, you can design a test to only extrapolate what it is that you want it to extrapolate. You can design a test to guide somebody to pick the answers that you want them to pick. Because the test has to come from an administrator. Once again, everything is debatable and nothing is fact. And I know that's an uncomfortable thing to deal with. I do know that's an uncomfortable reality to deal with, but that is the reality. Right? Because if we go into cosmology and epistemology, we'll begin to understand that a lot of the ways in which the United States was formed was based upon how it is that white evangelical Christians believed that the world came to be. And that's not just with the United States, that's with any land. That's human nature. That's human nature. In order for us to understand our environment, we must attach meaning to it. That is the reason why I do not believe that there is a particular form that God can come in. Because we understand God at the rate that we need to understand it. Right? But that rate of intelligence required me to step out of the intersection of blackness and Christianity. That intelligence required me to step outside of the axiological idea that black people are not intelligent. Oh, I'm sorry, the axiom that black people are not intelligent. Your intelligence is not determined by your intersection. Your intelligence is supported by your life experiences at that intersection. Which is the reason why when black men say, oh, you simping for these women, you need to go through my profile because I got smoke for black women too. The only difference is when I come, and I'm going to say it to you like this, man. I promise you I'm going to say it to you like this. When I get to coming with the smoke with black women, the one thing that I will say, the difference between black men and black women when I hold them accountable is that black women are more likely to say, you know what, you right. Black women are more likely to say that, but it's because their intersection and their intelligence, they have been socialized to believe that they can follow a man who knows what he's talking about, right? This does not inherently mean that I'm correct. It just means that I resonate with black women in such a way where it makes them feel validated, right? I resonate with black men in a way that makes them feel validated as well, but not as often. The reason being is because, once again, a number of us as black men have internalized the intelligence of white supremacy after being at the intersection of black and man. The way the beliefs that we espouse about masculinity are not African. They're not. They're not pre-colonial African. Oh, we don't have no examples of. Yes, we do. Go look for them. I got a book right now sitting in my library, The Spirit of Intimacy. That is a book that specifically talks about pre-colonial ideologies of male and female gender roles in the Dogon tribe, one of the most scientifically advanced tribes in the world. Do you know what one of their village rituals are? The men and women will dress like one another and go do something that man or that woman usually. So literally, women will go hunt. They will put on garments that are similar to the men's and go hunt. The men will put on garments that are similar to the woman's or more feminine, and they will sit and have a healing circle where they will literally sit, cry, and talk to one another about what it is that they experience as men in that village. But y'all concerned about a man putting on a dress? But y'all concerned about a woman out earning a man? Maybe that person is just real good at what it is that they do. Maybe that person just has an inordinate amount of intelligence in this area. But no, we so focused on ego retention that we miss the blessing that's sitting right in front of us. We asking for God to help us out. But because God is not appearing in the way that we believe God to appear, we miss it. That's the reason why that man drowned in the sea after God sent him 3 boats. Because he thought God was just going to come down from the steps and pick him up and take him on where it is. First of all, if God is coming down from heaven, God itself, if anything is descending from heaven on stairs and is saying, hey, come with me, I'm going to be like, am I going to be alive after this? Like, I got questions. Like, I understand I'm supposed to trust you, bro, and you know my heart, but I got questions because this very much feels like what happens when, you know what I'm saying, like we done watched the movies and somebody is ascending like the stairway to heaven, bro. Like, this is a stairway that looked like heaven. Did I drown and I ain't know it, my boy? Like, just inform me what's going on. Like, let's communicate real quick. You feel me? Right? We are so invested in what it is that we believe to be fact that we do not yield to other facts. Because once again, nothing is fact and everything is debatable. Can you put together a piss poor debate? 100%. That does not mean that what it is that person is talking about is any less or any more valid, right? So I'm going to give another example that's going to ruffle a lot of these women's feathers. Be very honest with y'all. There are 2 things that I agree with the alpha male community, the red pill community. Number one, there are a significant number of women who will shirk responsibility when it comes to accountability because they have conflated emotional intelligence with emotional maturity. Right? So when those men say there are women who will not take accountability, I've seen it happen in real time. I've seen it happen. Right? Never mind that I as an individual know that people don't take accountability based upon, once again, wanting to retain their ego, but there seems to be a large narrative that women do it more than men do. No. It's just that men do not have the emotional intelligence to be on par with a lot of women, so they become overwhelmed. But when women meet men who are emotionally intelligent, I've seen it. A lot of y'all fold. A lot of y'all. I've seen it. I've had men come into my therapy rooms damn near in distress because they're very direct and very straightforward communications are being met with a bunch of deflections and a bunch of, well, you did. I did this because you did Y. That's goofy. That's codependency. You are allowing somebody else's behavior to direct your behavior. I wouldn't have did this if you didn't make me upset. You tripping. You tripping. Right? So once again, what does that look like? Once again, what are we talking about? The second thing, and this goes into the first thing, the second thing is that a number of women do not believe. They have internalized toxic masculinity by not identifying that men have emotional variance, that men have emotional experiences. And although women will continue to say, we know that men have emotions, and we know that men need to talk, y'all will continue to utilize things that re-perpetuate the same type of trauma that he has had because you are upset and you know that it'll hurt him. You want him to show some type of response to pain. So you continue to push and push and push and push and push until he responds, because in your mind that shows that he cares. Normalized male alexithymia is a real thing. And a lot of women do not have the patience to deal with a man who is attempting to learn how to overcome that normalized male alexithymia. But once again, because I have this intelligence at my intersection, and because I am a man who can accurately express it, what does that mean? I've definitely had women tell me, oh no, because men do, but because men do. So are you attempting to invalidate my emotional experience? The same thing that you say men do to you all the time? And the way that I'm responding is because I'm very passionate about when women emotionally manipulate men and then brag or joke about it? Hold on a second, y'all. My bad, y'all. I had to go answer the door. But yeah, I'm very passionate about that topic. Very much so. Because there are very few women who will admit with an open face and an open palm that they have emotionally manipulated or emotionally traumatized men. Why? Because it goes against the perception that they have of themselves. Right? So, in the book, The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, she said a very, 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 very poignant thing that I was so glad that a woman or a film presenting person had said this, because it validated a lot of the things that I had been thinking. When men's ability to provide or to perform is attacked, they become defensive. That is where their ego maintenance comes in. With women, when you challenge their ability to nurture, provide, or create peace, that is where their ego formation comes in. That is where their defense comes in. I can validate that. Because when I step to women and when I say to a woman, you have hurt my feelings, I cannot tell you how many times I've been invalidated. When I step to a woman and I said, you are gaslighting me, the tears get to flowing. Why? Because a number of women believe that simply because they're women, they cannot cause emotional trauma or pain. Either that, or they know that they can cause emotional trauma and pain, and they utilize men's own perception of self to hide behind. So in other words, oh, you supposed to be a man, so why are you in your feelings? What? Bro, the jokes that women make laissez-faire about emotional manipulation and abuse of men is crazy. It is insane. But once again, the intelligence that exists at your intersection as a lot of women is that men do not have as many emotions as women. That men's emotions are not valued axiologically. right? So what are we looking at? What are we looking for? The intelligence at our intersection usually determines what it is that we will accept and what it is that we will defend. All I'm asking for y'all to do, is to be accountable for what your particular intersection is complicit in. Because your intersection is complicit in a type of damage based upon the deviations and the normalizations of white supremacy. 100%. Right? So let's see what's in these comments. Let's see what's in these comments. Let me see. What up, fool? What up, my boy? Big brother, what up, Gullah? How y'all doing? Yeah. Oh yeah, speaking on the Dogon, the Dogon people. If y'all ever want to contest white supremacy at its ideological base, use the Dogon people, because white supremacy focuses on the backwardness of Africanity, and it has co-opted Egyptian, or it has co-opted Cometian or Eastern African ideologies as white, right? So North African and Middle Eastern people in the United States are white. In the census, they are technically white. Black in the census is determined as any of the ethnic groups that exist in sub-Saharan Africa. The Dogon people are a sub-Saharan African group that white people have not figured out. And actually, they were so advanced that when they went to go see them in the 1870s, they said that these people are so advanced that they must be from Europeans. But that's where they fucked up. And the reason why they fucked up is this. If the Dogon people came from Egyptians, that means one or two things. And this is the reason why white supremacy, y'all can tell. Y'all see it. White supremacy tells on itself. If the Dogon people came from Egyptians, that means one or two things. One, that means that Africans were so advanced in their technological advancements that they could travel thousands of miles across a continent. Or two, different types of intelligences and knowledge existed across the continent for millions of years before they got there. Because once again, if you look at the map of Africa versus how large Africa is as a landmass, the maps of Africa or the maps of the United States or the maps of the globe that are usually mass produced are once again white supremacist. Those are not the accurate shapes of the continents. They're not. Africa is a humongous landmass, huge, right? Which means that the Dogon people came up with their own ways. Mm-hmm. 100%. You are 100% correct. That is the reason why white people cannot stay out of ancient spaces, because they are attempting to show everybody that they are God. They are on a mass marketing campaign to show that Christianity or whiteness is the purest form of reality. And it is not. Because if you are a good person, you don't have to go screaming at people to tell them that you're a good person. This is the craziest dissertation I've ever heard against dumb people. You know what? Sometimes you got to give a dissertation to these motherfuckers. They don't be getting it. Yes, the Dogon people definitely knew already about Sirius A, B, and the rotation. Not only that, they also knew about mitosis and meiosis, because if you listen to their creation story, the Nomos, 4 sets of twins, right? How it is that they descended from the noon in the heaven in an ark that was attached to it by a golden chain. That don't sound like meiosis, mitosis, and birth to y'all? I'm just saying. You are absolutely correct. A number of women will utilize what it is that I like to call emotional overload. So basically, what it is that they keep ratcheting up their emotional intensity until that man defaults or is overridden, so that they can get their way. Literally, a number of women know that men's emotional capacity is not enough to tolerate their overwhelming emotions. So instead of love bombing, they emotion bomb. They'll continue to drop emotions until that man becomes overwhelmed and gives up. Right? So, the best example of that is the joke that men make when women say, go have fun or you can go out. That's a type of guilt emotion bombing. You keep dropping hints that you don't want this man to go out instead of just saying that you don't want him to go out. It's guilt manipulation. That's exactly what it is. And y'all joke about it all the time. Going through your man's shit to confirm that he's what? If you got to do all that, you don't need to be in that relationship with that man. But if you do all that in every relationship that you're in, that means you're an insecure woman. Bottom line. Men use me as a therapist constantly without your consent. Ha, welcome to the party. Women use me as a therapist a lot. A lot. Because they are not used to men who understand emotions to the degree that I do. The Disordered Cosmos by Dr. Nah, I haven't. Wait, who is y'all? Don't fret. The women who I allow to engage with me that way, I allow for them to engage with me that way. The women who I don't, I put up firm boundaries. So if you in my company, you in my company. It's okay. You said UC runs to get more books? Oh wait. Yeah, you definitely gotta have, you know what I'm saying? Like, the books gotta be on patrol. You feel me? Like, yeah. So before y'all come to argue with me about shit, please understand that this is what you arguing with. That's almost 100 books just right there. Those are not all the books that I own. That's about 80, 85 something. But out of those books, I've read about 90% of them. So yeah, very, very few things. Nah, bro. No, there's no, no. And that's the reason why I really get so frustrated when I be talking to people. It's like, bro, you really be trying to argue what I've researched with what it is that you just put together in your mind, or did like 2 or 3 Google searches. No, bro, no, no, stop it, cut it out. Let's see what else we got. Hey. Don't worry about what's on my screen, boy. Y'all asking me questions about this Golden Girls. Thank you for being, yeah. Yes, sir. Ooh, yeah. Ooh. Said I will be there for you. They're gonna stop playing with me, boy. Actually, to be honest, I don't really watch TV. I kind of let it watch me. It's more so to like, it's like background noise. But Golden Girls, like, I'm not gonna lie, it's funny. I enjoy it. But yes. So all together, because I almost forgot that I was on YouTube. Woo! So this is what we're gonna do, right? As I said to y'all previously, we got Mindful Money Mondays coming up, Wisdom Wednesdays coming up. You dig what I'm saying? So we're going to continue to have these conversations in a more scheduled format. I just really wanted to hop on live and express what it is that was going on today specifically. Because, yeah, man, people was tripping over that TikTok, G. But we about to get out of here. I actually got to get ready to, engage with another one of my clients. And then, one of my partners just showed up. So we finna get busy. But not in that way, you guys. I'm gonna make sure that she's fed and stuff like that. But if y'all need anything, y'all know where to find me. Well, look, peace, love, soul, butter rose. We out of here.